So, Apolipoprotein E or ApoE is a kind of protein that is made by a polypoprotein gene or ApoE gene. And the ApoE is a kind of cholesterol carrier that is in charge of lipid transport and wound repair. So, epidemiologists found that the presence of ApoE can increase the risk for Alzheimer's disease. However, among social scientists, many researchers have looked at racial differences in cognitive functioning, cognitive decline over time, or the rates of Alzheimer's disease. But none of these studies, to the best of my knowledge, have used ApoE as one of their predictor variables. So this remains in the domain of epidemiologists, clinical researchers. And this remains a gap in research, where it may be very important for social scientists to incorporate genetic factors in our models to see whether ApoE contributes to the onset of Alzheimer's disease among different racial ethnic groups. So the existing studies have found that the rates of decline in cognition is much faster among African Americans when you compare them to whites. And still another study found that Hispanics have lower cognitive functioning than Caucasians. And there's only one study that compared Japanese with Caucasians. And they found that the frequencies of ApoE varies depending on the kind of ApoE we are comparing. So as you can see, even though some researchers, they found that the presence of ApoE may lead to the onset of Alzheimer's disease, but they haven't looked at racial differences. And all these studies, they focus on different segments of the population, so it can be very hard to reconcile their findings. And this remains a very important research gaps. And now we have many data, the health data, the health and retirement studies data, and other kinds of data that collects information on people's biomarker genetic factors in addition to socioeconomic and demographic characteristics. Research suggests that ethnic minorities like African Americans and Hispanics have higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. And ethnic minorities, Hispanics or blacks, usually seek treatment at a later stage in their disease progression. And these researchers attribute the higher risk among minorities to their lifestyle, their health behaviors, their lack of education compared to whites, their higher poverty levels compared to whites, the prejudice, stereotypes, discrimination they face in this country, and the other adversities they encounter in this country. However, no researchers have attempted to see whether the presence of ApoE4 is a mediating mechanism between all these lifestyle factors, education, poverty, and Alzheimer's disease. So, many research have looked at the potential role of education in buffering or reducing the onset or risk for Alzheimer's disease, but no research have looked at whether Apolipoprotein E or ApoE is a potential mediating factor between education and the risk for Alzheimer's disease. Researchers found gender differences in the association between Apolipoprotein E and cognitive decline. But according to these researchers, the relationship between ApoE and cognitive decline only happens among women who are 70 or older. Researchers have also found that a kind of ApoE, we call that ApoE3, can increase the levels of cholesterol in our system, and this can eventually lead to increased risk of cardiovascular disease. However, as is the case of Alzheimer's disease and dementia, no researchers have looked at whether this relationship holds among different racial groups, among different income or socioeconomic status groups, among different gender groups. So this remains a gap in research.